What happens to your brain when you become too comfortable? What if the life you've been trying so hard to build is slowly becoming the reason you're losing your edge? You wake up in the same bed, take the same route, do the same work, talk to the same people, watch the same shows, order the same food, and nothing is really wrong. That's the dangerous part, because when life becomes comfortable enough, your brain doesn't always reward you for growing. Sometimes it rewards you for staying exactly where you are. And you may not even notice it happening. At first, comfort feels like success. You finally have a stable job, a predictable routine, enough money to pay the bills, a familiar group of friends, a home where nothing surprises you. After years of stress, your brain finally gets to breathe. And that's a good thing. Your brain needs safety. Constant stress isn't healthy, and nobody needs to live in survival mode. But there's a strange point where comfort stops being recovery and starts becoming a cage. And the scary thing is, the cage doesn't feel like a cage. It feels like home. Think about the last time you did something that genuinely scared you. Maybe you moved to a new city, started talking to strangers, applied for a job you thought you weren't qualified for, started going to the gym, uploaded your first video, or simply told someone what you really felt. You probably felt nervous. Your heart raced. Your mind created dozens of reasons not to do it. But then something interesting happened. You survived. And afterward, you probably felt more capable than before. That's because your brain learns from experience. Every time you encounter something unfamiliar and discover that you can handle it, your brain updates its prediction of the world. It learns, I can do difficult things. But now imagine the opposite. Imagine living for years without doing anything difficult. No new challenges, no uncomfortable conversations, no meaningful risks, no unfamiliar environments. Everything is predictable. Your brain begins learning a very different lesson. Stay where you are. And this is where comfort becomes dangerous. Your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. It doesn't want to analyze every decision from scratch. It builds shortcuts. It's why you can drive a familiar route without remembering every turn. It's why you can brush your teeth while thinking about something completely different. And it's why your daily life can eventually become automatic. The problem isn't automation itself. The problem is when your entire life becomes automatic, because familiarity feels safe. And the brain often confuses familiar with good. You might hate your job, but you've been there for 6 years. You might feel lonely, but you're comfortable being alone. You might dream about starting something, but you're used to saying, maybe next year. You might know your relationship isn't making you happy, but the idea of changing it feels more frightening than staying unhappy. This is one of the strangest psychological traps. Sometimes people don't stay in situations because they're happy. They stay because the situation is familiar. Your brain knows how to handle familiar pain. It doesn't know how to handle unfamiliar possibility, and unfamiliar possibility creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety. So your brain whispers, why risk it? You're doing fine, maybe later, you could fail, and what if everything goes wrong? Notice something. Your brain doesn't need to convince you that your current life is amazing. It only needs to convince you that change is dangerous. That's enough to keep you still. And there's another problem. The more comfortable your life becomes, the smaller your world can become without you realizing it. At first, you stop doing one difficult thing, then another. You stop meeting new people. You stop learning new skills. You stop exploring new places. You stop asking difficult questions. And eventually, your comfort zone becomes so small that even small changes feel enormous. It's like a muscle. If you never use a certain ability, it becomes harder to use. Not because you've lost your potential, but because your brain has stopped expecting you to need it. And this is why some people feel strangely stuck, even when nothing is obviously wrong. They aren't necessarily miserable, they're just not expanding anymore. Their life is stable, but their identity has stopped moving. Think about a person who's been working from home for years. They wake up, open their laptop, work, order food, scroll, watch something, sleep, repeat. Every day feels easy. There are no major problems. But then one day they're invited to a networking event. And suddenly, something that sounds incredibly simple feels exhausting. Talking to strangers feels terrifying. Walking into an unfamiliar room feels uncomfortable. They may even tell themselves, "I'm just an introvert." Maybe they are. But sometimes what feels like personality is actually conditioning. You've practiced avoiding discomfort for so long that discomfort now feels like danger. And here's where things get even more interesting. Comfort doesn't just affect what you do. It can change what you believe you're capable of. Imagine two people with exactly the same ability. One repeatedly chooses difficult situations, the other repeatedly chooses easy ones. After a few years, they may have completely different beliefs about themselves. The first person thinks, "I can figure things out." The second thinks, "I'm just not that kind of person." Neither statement was necessarily true at the beginning. Their experiences created the belief. This is why your environment matters so much. Your brain is always collecting evidence about who you are. Every action becomes a tiny vote. When you avoid something difficult, your brain gets evidence. Maybe I can't handle this. When you face it, even badly, your brain gets different evidence. I survived. And that second lesson can become incredibly powerful. But here's the part most people get wrong. The solution isn't to destroy your comfort. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow. You don't need to move across the country. You don't need to turn your life into an endless struggle. That's not growth. That's chaos. The goal isn't permanent discomfort. The goal is controlled discomfort. Because comfort should be your place to recover, not your permanent address. Think of an athlete. They don't train every second of the day. They rest, they recover, then they challenge their body again. Stress followed by recovery creates adaptation. Your mind can work in a similar way. You need periods where life feels safe, but you also need moments that force your brain to update its assumptions. Have a conversation you've been avoiding. Learn something you're terrible at. Travel somewhere unfamiliar. Create something and let people judge it. Speak when you're normally silent. Say no when you usually say yes. Start before you're ready. The challenge doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be real. Because every time you willingly enter a little discomfort, you're teaching your brain something. Uncertainty is survivable. Failure is survivable. Embarrassment is survivable. Change is survivable. And eventually, something strange happens. The things that once scared you become normal. That's how your comfort zone expands. Not by waiting until you're fearless, but by repeatedly proving that fear doesn't control you. And maybe that's the real danger of becoming too comfortable. It's not that comfort makes you lazy. It's that comfort can quietly convince you that the person you are today is the person you have to remain. You stop asking, "What could I become?" and start asking, "How can I keep everything exactly the same?" Years can pass this way, not because something terrible happened, but because nothing happened. And one day, you may look back and realize that your biggest regret wasn't failing. It was all the things you never attempted because your life was comfortable enough to make you stay. So tonight, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Not, "Am I happy?" Ask, "Where in my life have I become so comfortable that I've stopped growing?" Maybe you'll find it in your career, maybe in your relationships, maybe in your health, maybe in your habits, maybe in the way you've started describing yourself. And when you find it, don't destroy your comfort. Just challenge it. Take one small step outside the familiar, because your brain will always prefer what it already knows, but your future doesn't live inside what you already, it lives just beyond it. And sometimes, the life you're afraid to leave behind is the very life that's keeping you from becoming the person you could have been.